Bill Gustin here from Miami-Dade Fire Rescue Training Center in Doral, Florida, just west of Miami International Airport. And with us we have Daryl Liggins, retired from Oakland. Clark Lamping, coming to you live from Fighting Engine 38, Clark County, Nevada, Las Vegas area. The Canuck on the border, Brent Brooks from Toronto. And my uncle Mike Dugan, retired from the FDNY. And we have a very special guest because he's coming to us live from Santiago, Chile. Ed, and I will let you, Ed, make the introduction with your friend and take as much time as you want. Let us know what you're doing, why you're there, and what you expect.
Hey, thanks, Cap. Well, first, this is my friend Christian Guzman, who does water supply training here in Chile, and I was down here doing the Costanera stair climb, which is up 62 flights, the tallest building in Latin America. And he asked me if I'd stay, afterwards to be able to do some water supply training in the city of Santiago. And the 20th company was gracious enough to let me stay with them while I'm waiting for next weekend to be able to do the water supply training. And so that's what I'm doing here in Chile. I had running around the city with an engine company and getting ready to do water supply. Yep.
Oh, I like that. Looks like a Ferrara.
It is. Now look at the next picture.
Yeah, okay.
That's 8 pack seats in the back of the engine.
Wow.
We rolled for an elevator alarm with 10 people in the engine.
Wow.
So,
yeah, that's great. And Ed, I want to give you a plug. You teach at FDIC. You teach throughout the country, especially in the state of Ohio. You have got to catch his. It's a 3-part article, correct, Ed? Don't touch the red button in Fire Apparatus Emergency Equipment Journal. Excellent examination of pump controls, and not just for engineers, for any firefighter, fire officer. It's a must read. Another couple shout outs to our friends at Key Hose. That's keyhose.com. I'm biased all to hell. I love Key Hose because that's what we use here, and it's widely used throughout South Florida. Then there's other premium brands of hose that are fine. My point is this: don't go cheap on hose. Have hose that is heat resistant, abrasion resistant, and most of all, kink resistant. And I say this on every one of these hangouts: take the key challenge, see if you can kink the hose. Another big shout out for Miami-Dade's Blackheart extrication team, which just won overall first place in the World Extrication Competition in Portugal, of all places, in Portugal, and almost a clean sweep. I'm so proud of those young people. And if any of you are watching, well, I'll have you watch later. Thank you for making us all proud, all of you Black. And it's a proud moment for this department. So we have Jimmy is crawling down. Jimmy Davis, captain from Engine Company 43 in the Chicago Fire Department, is on duty, as is Clark. So Clark could leave at any moment. And Jimmy is already on a run. So he's probably making as we speak right now, probably making a parking lot out of somebody's building there in the city of Chicago. So actually, let's talk about a serious issue. And that is, we've had 2 incidents within the last month or so, I think, Captain Mike, about firefighters falling a considerable distance down shafts and defying that it's a miracle. And then they had a fireman, I believe, fall off a roof in Chicago, and I believe he's paralyzed from the waist down, I think. So we've had a bad month with falls. Mike, either your personal firsthand experience or vicariously throughout your job, there seemed to be some type of pattern, something you could pass on to us where we could avoid these tragedies.
There are a couple of things, Bill, that I say about this. The first thing is the brother that just fell up in Manhattan at the fourth alarm, I think it was going down. They were on the landing and they were backing off because there was so much fire. It was a fire in an air shaft, so they had fire in a couple of apartments, from what I understand. But they were in the staircase and they wanted to back off the landing. He stepped back, and he was in 58 engine, stepped back and tripped. And there's a half landing window that they took for ventilation in the staircase to give them clean air in the staircase. And he just tumbled right out, fell 40 feet onto a one-story setback. And he broke some ribs, punctured a lung. But amazingly, he was only in the hospital for a couple of days and then went home to recuperate. So I also, as a young fireman, had one of the senior men stop me from falling in a vacant building fire. I'm young and dumb, and I'm up there with the hook, and I'm pulling and I'm pulling and I'm pulling, and I'm trying to get something to go. And the senior man walks over to me and looks at and smacks me and says, "What the hell are you doing?" He goes, "Do you see what you're standing right next to? That's the parapet. And it's only a 2-foot high parapet." He goes, "If you slip, you're going to fall and go into that rubber-strewn yard right there with old ADVs, cars, bicycles, all this crap down there." He says, "You always got to look where you are doing this stuff, where you are going to go if you slip, where you are going to go." And the brother backing downstairs, the Scott Pack changes your center of gravity. Mm-hmm. So show you how easy this is. I got some pictures from a fall that happened. Now, this is the roof. They were going from this building with you can see the skylight and the attic ventilator and the scuttle hole. They were going from this one to the next building over to do the roof. Next, please. That's the shaft on the other side. So what you just saw, go back one, please. It's right on the other side. You can see on the lower left-hand corner to the center of the picture, you can see where the different shaftway is. Next picture. And that's what it looks like right there. He stepped over that first roof without even seeing it and stepped into it. Next picture, please. That air conditioner that is in that window on the upper portion of that picture flipped him, and is probably what saved him from really, because it turned him over and he landed on his back. But because of the shaftway, it saved him from going down feet first and really hurting himself significantly. Next picture. So that's what it looks like from the roof. Now they're up there on the roof, and you can see that shaftway where the different, like the siding is for in that air and light shaft. You can see that. Okay, but how difficult it would be to see that shaft in the middle of the night or something else. It's insane. So what the brothers ended up having to do was they called in a run for it. And next picture, please. And they had to take the window out in the apartment, and that's the width of the shaft. It was only 24 inches. Okay, and the last picture is what that looked like. And you can see the siding there in that shaft. They had to take that window out in the apartment to get in there and get to him. Okay, this happened on a beautiful, clear day. Now think about it, at 3 o'clock in the morning, with the smoke, with the wind, maybe there's snow on the roof, whatever, all of this other stuff. You always, always, always have to be careful of these things. If you see them, you have to make sure you put them in your department's notice for the building address. There is a shaft in the center of the building. It is open. It is unsecured. There is no parapet. You have to put all of these things in there. It's vitally important. The other thing is we talk a lot about crossing at the front of the buildings. You have to cross at the front of the buildings, but you have to be aware where you're crossing. You have to look. You have to know where you're putting your feet. And if you can't see, you're blinded in the smoke, stop. Get down on your hands and knees, and hopefully the wind will change. If not, start crawling. But do not go walking blindly up on a roof, because these things could happen. This could happen very easily to any of us. And like I said, this was just guys up on the roof doing a building inspection. Can you imagine how bad it would be during a fire?
Yes. Yeah. Now, there's a couple of things that resonate with me. They were on an inspection, but they made that a run and got an alarm number.
Because he fell. They had an injury. They had to.
Yeah. Okay. And would that be the type of information? I know we talked in a previous session would that be SID's information or that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. When
All
you
right.
go up on that roof, and our system is called SIDS, Critical Information Dispatch System, that goes by the address, and you put in 1214 Main Street. That address comes up, and then it'll say that 1214 Main Street is a 4-story building, and it has a roof shaft, on the roof that will allow, you can fall in. It's an unsecured light shaft, an air light shaft. And the other thing is, very honestly, if there's a fire in that apartment, if we go back to those pictures and give me picture number 5, please, Mark. Okay, there's a fire in this apartment. Go to number 6, please. Sorry. There's a fire in this apartment and that window fails. You now have that whole shaft.
Yeah, man.
Rocket ship. Okay, so you can get, because there are 2 apartments per floor, you can have fire in a whole bunch of different occupancies in this building. And if 2 buildings share a light shift, which happens frequently in New York, then you could have fire in 2 separate buildings. So if you have a fire in that shaft, and that's what the one where the guy fell recently was a shaft fire, that ended up being a 4th alarm, I think. It might have only been a 3rd, but it was a major alarm because they have fire in the shaft. You have to get water in the shaft and operate up the shaft to cool that shaft down, because it's exposing all the other ones, especially, these older buildings with the air and light shafts. So that's just a lot to think about. But we have to be very, very.
I want to thank one of our viewers for setting us straight. From Chicago, the firefighter was not paralyzed. Fred, thank you, my brother. He's not paralyzed. He has several broken bones and a long recovery ahead. But he will recover. And that's relatively good news. And Fred, thank you for participating. I take it you're a firefighter in the Chicago area, Fred, and that's where I began my career. Proud member of the Wheaton Fire Department, and my dad spent 33 years on the Chicago Fire Department. Fellas, anybody else want to talk about fall hazards? Not necessarily, I have one, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a shaft.
Well, a couple of things I was thinking about is, one, I was very surprised to hear that this was in the daytime, because when Mike was talking, one of my thoughts was always, with flashlights. I'm surprised a lot of the choices of flashlights that people are using at night. And it sounds like in this instance, you have all the light you can have. It's the daylight. But if you're going to be up on roofs, sometimes just having these chest lights or a helmet light is not lighting up properly where you're walking. I always liked having the box light. I use the same type of box light the FDNY use, because when that is strapped to you, it's lighting up the area that you're walking. And so think about the kind of light that you're using at night, because just a little beam of light from a jacket light may not be adequate protection. But the other thing is, before any information could even be put into a dispatch system, you have to be familiar with it. And we may not all be going to fires all the time, but we are going to a lot of inspections or EMS calls or alarms, and take the time to walk around and up and down the building and become familiar with it. You're already out there. 95% of it's done. You're there. Just, take the extra time after you reset the alarm or finish the EMS call or something to walk around the building and get a little more familiar with it, so you can put that type of information into a system.
I just watched a very compelling video. I honestly don't know how long it has been out. And I highly recommended that everybody watch Boyd Street, which was a production of the National Fallen Firefighters Association, I guess. They have another one out of LA, and it's called Go Down Swinging. And it's about a young man that fell through a roof and sustained very bad burns. But I think he's going to return to the job. And it's a good learning video because it discusses tactics, and it discusses, and they examine it, and they take a critical look at themselves. This is the LAFD. And the struggle that this young man had. And something we've talked about before is situational awareness. He knew he had to find a wall. He knew he had to find a wall. If he could find a wall, he's going to drastically increase the chances of being found, being rescued. So I highly recommend that you take a look at, do I have that right? Can anybody correct me? I think it's called Go Down Swinging, something to that effect. It's another very compelling video. God bless LA. Things don't always go right at fires. And when they don't go right, they're a department that shares those experiences with us.
And Bill?
Yes, sir.
I just want to say, because Darrell is 100% correct about finding these buildings. These guys were out on building inspection when they were doing this. And they were going from building to building, and they decided to go over the roof instead of going back down and walking back up, because you got to do from the basement up. And then they went to the next one, and they're going to go from the roof down. Just, it's easier. So they're doing side-by-side buildings, and that's where he went over. And I used to say to the guys in the firehouse that building inspection is a walk in the neighborhood ruined by paperwork, and I'll do the paperwork.
I hear you. We have somebody else joining us now, and I want to make an introduction here. Everybody knows Jimmy Davis.
Hey, guys.
Who are you impersonating today? What department are you impersonating?
Oh, I did bring my FDNY hat.
All right.
I'm the real deal today. Yeah.
All right. And you're at Fighting Engine 43.
Yep, that is correct. You can see us in the background. We're ready to go.
Is the ambulance in quarters?
They just got to run. They don't spend too much time here, so they just got to run. They just pulled in, grab something to go, and then they're on the road. A little lunch to go.
You're on deck 43.
We're on deck, correct.
All right. Below me, if your screen is the same as mine, is Ed Collette. I think you've met Ed before. He's a friend of mine that writes for Fire Engineering and writes for Fire Apparatus and Equipment Journal. And he is in Santiago, Chile. And his friend, what's this friend's name? You're muted, Ed.
Christian.
And he's a bombero in Chile. And Go Down Swinging, the Nathan Espinoza story. Okay. All right. And whoever put that up, can we find it on YouTube? We find everything else on YouTube.
Right. Yeah, that's on YouTube, guys.
Yeah. Okay. Great, Clark. So Jimmy, good to have you with us. And the point I was going to make up Falls is these lightweight type 2 buildings, like in Florida, you find them at golf courses and, to keep all your lawn equipment and your golf carts and all these things. They're type 2, non-combustible. Remember, there's a huge difference between non-combustible and fire resistive. And these things are just disposable buildings. The problem is on the roof. It's a corrugated metal. And then they'll set a translucent, I guess it would be fiberglass, skylight over the roof in that opening in the roof, and it has the same contour, the same corrugation as the metal deck itself, which is thin as paper. And it is a regards from the north of Mexico. Delicious Fire Department. So we shouldn't be on those roofs to begin with. I think, Clark, you and I have discussed this before. And if we're going to, our department used Breslin distributor to cut off that lateral spread in a self-storage building, but they did so from a ladder. They didn't get up on the roof like that.
That's true, Cap Gustin. We have a policy in Clark County. We do not go on top of corrugated metal roofs. All right, and that came after that Denver firefighter in 2015 who did fall through a commercial building through one of those skylights and fell 20 feet. And fortunately, he died from his injuries a couple weeks after the fall. But yeah, we have a truck company operations manual that states we do not go on the roof, not only because of that, because the corrugated metal is not designed to support a fireman, 300-pound fireman in full gear. And you put a couple guys together, absolutely not. You're asking for trouble if you're standing on one of those roofs.
Jimmy, we want to set the record straight here. I know you had a firefighter fall down a shaft. You've had some falls recently, and I know that at any moment you're going to get a run here. So you want to go ahead and let us know. Before you joined us, Mike did a really good examination of a shaft that they discovered when they were on an inspection, and a firefighter did fall down the shaft. Correct, Mike?
Correct.
Yeah. So, and he had some compelling pictures. So, Jimmy, would you like to share some thoughts about these? I know that you're pretty passionate about this shaft issue, and that's one reason why we're taking the time on it.
Yeah, Cap, number one, firemen, we shouldn't be falling down shafts. All right. We kind of know better. Actually, let me go back a year in time.
On the webcast. So.
Yeah. Today marks the 1-year anniversary of the fall of Drew Price, fireman on Truck 44. He lost his life in a shaft at a fire on the north side. So today would be 1-year anniversary. So it's kind of fitting how we have this show and actually going to be talking about this conversation. Now, the one that happened a couple weeks, it was November 3. That was a Sunday. They had a good fire. And I think Pete or Mark, if you have that, I know I provided some pictures here. Yeah, and I'll talk about this. This was 645 North. What the heck was this? This was on Hamlin, which was only about a block or two, believe it or not, from Our Lady of Angels.
So this would be engine 85 still.
Well, if 85, they were disbanded, that would have been 85, correct. So right now it's 95 in that. So they had a report. They had a good fire. I actually have a video too of that. Maybe, Pete, we could show that later. But listen, yeah, we'll talk about this. Is their on arrival conditions, and I'm specifically talking about the recent fall down the light shaft. So this is when they arrived. If you want to show that video, this is the heavy volume.
air conditioner. We got a positive self. You can do whatever you want to do. Good. Let me know when y'all ready. Let me know.
All right, so there was the video of the second floor fire. This was a 3-story ordinary building, type 3 construction. These are notorious buildings that are going to have light shafts. And we got to talk about, I don't know if you did that, Captain Mike, what is the purpose of the light shaft? To provide, number one, circulation of air, and then number two, to provide some natural lighting into a little crevice, as you can see in this picture. That little narrow area with the wall penetration with the coping stone on it, man, that looks like it's about shin high or ankle high, all right, depending where you stand on this thing. Easy to fall into that. So on the picture on the right is the original fire building. That is a picture that depicts where the gentleman fell. There's some more pictures of that, but it was a 40-foot fall down this light shaft, 40 feet. See if we can advance again here. Here it is. Okay.
Christ, man.
So this is the fall from it. We got to see top side. Now we get to see the shaft, and this is going to be on the lower floor of that here. And this is every bit of 40 feet. If you look at this thing, you says, how is this survivable, man? And it's by the grace of God. Not too many people are going to survive this fall, right? Either being killed or having permanent injuries as well. If we can fast forward again, Pete, here it is. This is a night shot, and we'll kind of just hover around here like a helicopter. Night operations on a flat roof, especially in these type of buildings, are very, very dangerous here. Because number one is you're limited in visibility with the night as well. It's not illuminated. You are going to see, as you see in this picture here, things that are just going to trip you up, and there's no pun intended in that, where this is a very dangerous condition up here. I know in our department and many others, you know, they put an experienced crew up there as well. But this goes to show you, for example, that mishaps do happen no matter how seasoned, how veteran you are. All it takes is one mistake, one slip.
Let me get the door for you.
One trip, and then the rest is history here. So this is it looking at the night. I don't know if you can look closely here. The only protection that you had, if you could see that, it's metal wiring. Do you guys see that? On the right and left, that brown area is kind of like chicken wire, but it's a little heavier gauge metal. This is not designed whatsoever, right, to support the roof of a fireman. All this is designed to do is keep the crap, the garbage, the rubbish from going down in that shaft. It's all the purpose for that. Protection-wise, it is not going to stop any of our falls going down there. So they covered that up with this chicken wire. And this is a night scene. Again, it is the shaft where he went down. What else we have here, Pete? Again here too. And if you took the light away from this, do you think you'd be able to see that? Maybe not. One more, Pete, let's advance, and then we get into some conversation here in that. I had said earlier that we should not be falling down light shafts, air shafts. All right, and I wanted to talk about some old school method, and I know Captain Dugan, man, you've been on more roofs than I have. All right, you know, if you're walking on the roof, number one is knowledge, and I think you said that, knowledge of building construction, knowledge of the particular features that is going to be consistent with the type 3 ordinary. You're going to have light shafts in there, so you know that you knowingly know that you're going to have roof hazards up on the top side. But there's one that, and we learned about that, is if you ever seen the blind man, he walks with the walking sticks. All right. He navigates his whereabouts and where he's going with this walking stick. Can we translate that and do that as well as firemen on there? If you can't see, all right, number one is another one, stop. All right. Don't walk any further. But we need the advent and think a little bit more of rooftop safety, using the pole, using the pike pole, using the hook. All right. If to sweep out what's in front of you, listening for different sounds, different textures, different height elevations, things that would red flag you. The signal says, wait, let me sound it, all right? What's over there, all right? I think in haste and in a hurry, we get ourselves in trouble. But sometimes we got to slow it down a gear here too, all right? We got the engine, they're making their push. We're getting water in there. We got searches going on. But turn it down a notch on that roof, because I think that's where we're laxing, is that we're all trying to hurry and not do things, and we become task saturated and we're not seeing the whole picture. All right. So getting back to the roof, have a probe in that. There was another saying too, remember that in recruit school, and I don't know if they said it. If you can't see get down to your knees.
Can't
Right?
see your feet.
Get down to your knees. And another thing that is useful in many, many ways, especially on a roof like that with the cockloft, thermal imaging camera. Thermal imaging camera is going to make out the contours. It's going to make some of the objects. If there's a dissimilar object, again, that should be a red flag. That should be popping in your head that there's something dissimilar with this roof. Again, a reason to pause, take a whole look, a whole perspective of the entire roof operations. Are we bringing thermal imagers up there? Are we stacking the cards again in our favor when we're working, on top of these walkable, and we call them walkable rooftops, which by far is probably more dangerous than a peak roof, because we know it's peak. We see it and we're limiting our operations off of a roof ladder. But this one, you're following the entire contour. So getting back to these type of buildings and knowing these buildings, anytime that you cross over to a building, you need to make sure when that other foot has a solid, firm surface. Don't make the mistake of just climbing over and thinking there is a solid object or you're going to the adjoining roof. That may not be the case. And I know in our buildings in these type 3 ordinary multi-dwellings, these shafts, they're either in the middle of the building or they're going to be on the ends. All right. That's where we're going to find them. Again, that should be set in your head too, is knowing the dangers and knowing what is at risk. It is number one, that's going to kill us. Number two, that's going to injure us. Now, getting back to the fireman who fell, he's recovering well. He's recovering, all right, but still is a road ahead of him, per se, all right. Let's move on. Pete, I think I have a couple more pictures here, and we can polish this off. All right, and I want to talk about, this is a really good rainy day, or in your Captain Gustin, on a hurricane day.
Mm-hmm.
Look at Google rooftops. Pick a couple buildings in the block. Use this as a company drill. You get a really good oversight, all right, an upper portion of Google Maps. Do your still district. Find out what's up there, what's on top of these roofs. Here's something from Google Map of the fire building right here. And you
Jimmy,
can see, yep.
Can I just say something? Because
Yeah, go ahead, Cap, please do.
I always, in New York City, we always told the brothers and sisters to cross at the front. But now looking at that building, if you went over the roof in the front, from the lighter shade to the darker shade, if you followed the front of the building, you would go down that, probably the entranceway between the two buildings. I don't know if that's an entranceway or just a shaft, an air and light. But again, you got to know your buildings.
Amen.
You have to know your buildings.
Yeah, and you could see that, Cap, because typically there's many buildings, again, we can cross over. Your safe side is going to be the alpha side, but it still does not neglect you to check, all right, when you do the crossover, again, that that you're actually stepping on a roof. This would trip somebody up. It's important, again, to know the bearings and walk the rim. That's where we're going to find out these hazards. And if you see a hazard, oh, man, I got to talk about that, too. If you see something on here, it says, hey, brother, watch out. There is a light shaft, middle of the building, delta side. Let the guys know, because guess what? That just puts that and plants that in their head. Okay, thank you. Light shaft. All right, to be cognizant and to be aware of that is up there. If you see something, just anything on the fire ground, don't assume that you know. Say something.
Ed, or Jimmy, I would tell a first-day probationary firefighter on the job, if you see something, do not assume that the officer or senior members of this company or on the fire scene see it.
Mhm.
If you think something isn't right, say it. I want to hear it. It used to be the philosophy was new people keep your mouth shut and your ears open. No, I want to hear what you have to say. You're another set of eyes and ears for us. And encourage your people to be observant and to speak out. And like you say, Jimmy, don't assume.
Mm.
Don't assume. Yep. And I'm not going to assume. See, Clark, you're assuming that I'm going to forget about talking about our friends at Key Hose, but I've got that figured out. And we're past halfway. And I want to give a shout out to our friends at Key. That's keyhose.com. They're combat ready is what my department uses. Then there's a smaller diameter. It's happy places around 150, 160 gallons a minute. It's the combat sniper, basically the same through the weave, very kink resistant. And then I like that True ID. I like that True ID. And that's, like I said, you could take the Key challenge. Don't go cheap on hose. Whatever you buy, don't go cheap on hose. Ed, can I talk a little bit about water supply there? You're in a big city. Now, Santiago is a big city, correct?
Correct. What is it? Roughly 5 million?
I would say more 8 million.
8 million?
All right. Now, you have, I'm going to guess you have a hydrant system in Santiago?
Yes, there is, but to kind of give you some reference on that, last night, the night company, we went out 9 o'clock at night, spent 2 hours flowing water, going through their pre-connects. So we were flowing one line connected to a hydrant with 100 feet of 3-inch hose, 1 1 3/4 line flowing roughly 160 gallons a minute. We had 0 pressure on our inlets, and you could feel that 3-inch was soft. So while they have hydrants, they're not robust enough if you need to start moving higher volumes of water.
You know,
So-
you said something in your latest article. If you have a relief valve, you can adjust any pressure. If you have a governor, you have to put up with whatever pressure you have at idle. And
Right.
when you add the which is what, about 45 psi, and then you add whatever the residual pressure is on the hydrant, and that gets to be problematic where you have a lot of pressure, high pressure. I mean, so much so that, Daryl, are they still using the Gleason valve in San Francisco?
Yeah, actually, Brent got to see a Gleason valve and maybe Clark for the first time when we went through San Francisco a couple of weeks ago. But that is specific to a secondary water system that San Francisco has. That is a high pressure system. And Jimmy, does Chicago have the same, a high pressure system and Gleason valves? No.
No,
But,
we got the whole lakefront. Everything's predicated on low pressure.
Yeah.
Your hydrants are usually about 30 to 35 pounds.
Yeah, the Gleason valve is a specific valve made for these extraordinarily high pressure hydrants in San Francisco. In Oakland, we don't have them, but they're upwards of 350 psi of pressure. So you don't even need an engine on those hydrants.
I like what I'm reading here from Bob, Cherry Hill, Illinois. We now carry portable LED work light style floodlights to help illuminate large open areas to supplement handheld lights and apparatus lights. They are portable enough to take to the roofs. Great idea, man. Great idea. Thank you for your participation. Jimmy, you are, as you said, Chicago has got the abundance of water.
Mm-hmm.
You got the volume, brother. You don't have the pressure.
That's
so
correct.
if you are going to perform a hydrant to fire, which I would call a forward lay, Captain Mike would call a flying stretch, I think, from hydrant to fire, you are limited by the residual pressure on that hydrant, but you do, on occasion, or depending upon conditions, do lay from hydrant to fire. It's more of a question than a statement.
Cap, that forward lay is not used. We try to cap the distance as 100 feet, the pump engine from any hydrant. If we're past that, then we're going to have to go with inline and pass that pressure along. We can go as many engines in line. We can do one or two of them. We can do three of them. But 100 feet's the max on that, and then we're going to have to start thinking about supplying another engine, boosting that pressure up if you're attacking supply engine. Depends where you fit in the relay.
Okay. And then we just had a discussion, Ed, about automatic pressure control governors. Well, getting back to your article, you were mentioning that if you're only going to flow a couple of 1 3/4 lines, that maybe don't use the large diameter. You can have it on there with a gate valve and use a 3-inch line. That was one of your solutions, if I remember right.
Yeah, I mean, we become so, I think 5-inch has become, or LDH has become such a default value that
Yes.
we're not allowing our operators and our officers to think, okay, I have a room and contents fire. It's a sub 500 gallon a minute fire. I don't need 5-inch. There's a couple advantages to using 3. It's a little more robust. It will have extra friction loss that will let the truck have to work a little more. But from an operator standpoint, if I have to shag hose any distance, I want to do 3-inch over 5-inch.
And if you're laying hose across a major thoroughfare, don't let it be the LDH. You're going to lose your supply line. With a 4-way valve, we can lay a 3-inch line in and start operating off a hydrant pressure. Another company can come back, take suction from that 4-way. I think I'm representing the only department here that, Brent, do you guys use a 4-way valve at all in Toronto?
No.
Okay. Works for us. A lot of places it's not necessary when you have a high hydrant pressure. Daryl, I don't imagine that you have a.
Yeah, Oakland uses a 4-way valve, and for those of you that don't know what it is,
Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, it's a valve you put on the hydrant, and your what we call a lead, just the supply line is just going through this valve to the engine. If you need to increase pressure without interrupting water flow, a pumping engine, and this is specific to forward lay departments. It's not my favorite lay, but it is specific to forward lay departments. An engine could go to the hydrant, and then off of the valve, they get an inlet into that pumping engine, and then a discharge back into the valve. And basically, you are now relay pumping, so to speak. You're increasing the pressure. And it's a really simple device. Most of the time, a vast majority of the time, it's not pumped to. But if you do need to increase pressure, we have a lot of hills where a very hilly city Oakland is, or long distances, you can increase the pressure, and that's great. But I'll also say, kind of going back to what Ed said, we have 4-inch 4-inch supply line. We also have 3-inch. And if a company knows, for whatever the fire case may be, maybe it's an encampment, a car, an RV with no exposures, that they are not going to be pumping more than 2 lines, it's absolutely fine for them to then use 3-inch instead of the 4-inch. We don't want to be in a habit of doing that because we assume that this house fire or RV next to an exposure or something won't need, more than that, because then sometimes we we're shortchanging ourselves for the potential growth of the fire. But I do agree. Yeah, for a lot of those fires where it's not going to be more than 2 lines, a 3-inch will provide adequate water supply.
Ed Collette. It used to be, and I don't know if it's still the case, auxiliary inlets. I know when I came on this job, don't use auxiliary inlets. It's basically to fill your booster tank. Can you comment on that now? Can you spec a pump, or are pumps generally better plumbed with auxiliary inlets than they used to be in terms of limiting the amount of water coming into your pump?
Well, this really goes into knowing your specific apparatus, especially in today's apparatus where you have the full body midship pumps. Those normally have a decent hydraulics going from the auxiliary inlet into the pump. But you have to know it, because I looked at the auxiliary inlet here in company's 20 engine, and there are 3 90-degree elbows between the auxiliary inlet and the pump inlet where it's going into the pump. This because it's not going into the casing directly. My Pierce that I had at my department, that auxiliary inlet went right into the big cast iron casing inlet to the pump. So it really has to do with knowing your engines. And then if you start looking at PTO pumps and the pedestal style pumps, the inlet manifolds are all fabricated by the apparatus manufacturer. So you need to crawl under your apparatus and look at how well the plumbing. And you can try to spec it. A lot of times that becomes a little more difficult to actually get the spec you want. Most manufacturers will get a pump module from either Hale or Watrous or one of the pump manufacturers, and then it'll drop in to the apparatus. Now, some of them still make everything custom. A lot of time you're getting prefab modules into your engines. But like anything else, know your engine, look at it, know which inlets are good for you. If you're flowing high volume, use both 6-inch inlets on your truck.
Ed, on our engines, we have a large diameter inlet on the side that goes straight into the pump, but it's also spec'd with one at the rear that's just under the hose bed. And I can't tell you exactly the diameter. I believe it's 3-inch piping going from that rear inlet all the way to the pump with a few turns. And it's a big deal. If you have the opportunity to hook up to that side inlet for a large fire and you need that volume, you may want to choose another inlet rather than just the convenience of where you can hook up. It's something that people have to pay attention to, is exactly what you said.
Yeah, and a lot of people, everyone knows the downfall of front intakes, because it's quite obvious that intake line has to go up and over the axle, change the shape and diameter. Everyone knows that. But a lot of people get misled, like what you were talking, Daryl, that rear intake, while we usually get more volume than we do from a front, it can reduce down in diameter. And most people think that goes straight to the pump. It doesn't. It'll usually do a 90-degree down and then a 180 back up into the intake manifold. So there are many, bends and losses that you're going to see in that rear as well. So like I think everyone's in agreement. Know your truck well. If you're the operator, you should know your truck intimately as far as how I can get the best water in to get the most water out.
Brent, did you have some videos or pictures for us, sir?
Yeah, the guy there is actually me, Jimmy, and Clark. We were in Pontiac, Michigan, and we were doing quick water where we'd pull up with a crew of 4. The captain go do his 360, but the senior firefighter would pull the 2.5 with a 1 1/8 smoothbore tip, and they would take that forward, and they'd be flowing water from exterior to interior. So they have 2 minutes worth of tank water while within that 2 minutes, they now have a crew that the driver is hooking up to the hydrant. That third firefighter is taking the 1.75-inch hose line, going to the front door, dropping the pack, spraying the pack, forcing the door, masking up. And when that firefighter is ready, and we did 8 fires this way, 4 in the morning, 4 in the afternoon, we had exterior to interior big water from a 2.5 going in. And that's kind of like high-rise operation. We brought that 2.5 to the point where they made entry, spin the tip off, hooked up the 1.75-inch hose line, and it was a nice fluid motion. And we did it 8 times, and it was I'm not gonna say it was flawless every time, but you could see that process of the driver working, everyone's working, and the fires didn't stand a chance.
Brent,
yeah,
would that be for like an attached garage?
Everything. You got that long setback, that long layer. You have big fire on floor 2 when you pull up and they have to force entry, flow that water, use that tank water, give that occupant inside there a fighting chance by, that surface cooling, that water mapping, just exterior to interior water, knock it down real quick, reset that fire. And now we're coming in with that smaller diameter hose line. And we didn't lose our cadence through that whole push, which is phenomenal.
We have the video?
We do. It's in the 3 and 1, Mark, if you got it.
Hey, we're down with the limitations on time. Let's watch.
Yeah, there you go. So there's your 2.5 in the video on the left. So they break that down. The video in the center is them flowing that. And the video on the right is after we've flown that big water, that tank water, 500 gallons in this case. Now we're going to make entry interior, and we didn't lose our water. We have to secure the bale. The video on the far side there. Mm-hmm. That's the weakest link, but it was such a fun drill to do it with firefighters that have never done it before, and we never lost water. The driver was always able to keep up to the pace of the big line flowing. And then making that transition from exterior attack to interior push. It was great. And then there was 2 separate fires in that shipping container, and they knew when we were flowing from exterior to interior, they could feel the heat change. I know Clark was inside up on the nozzle team most of the time, but it's that instant relief, and we're coming for you type thing with big water, and then we make that smooth transition. So it was pretty neat. It's like high-rise operations mixed with residential house operations.
Yeah, let's make no mistake. I think we're all in agreement here. Residential fire, we may not take the time to secure our own water supply if we're the first due company. And there's a lot of variables. Who's your second due, and how far are they coming from? And they may not ever get there. And, a lot of variables. But the discount auto parts at night, the dollar store at night, no. Get yourself hooked up and expect that when you open this place up, it's going to light up, and you better be ready with redundant water supplies. Entirely different type of fire.
And also on that note, you're talking about those big commercials, Captain Gustin. I would recommend not hooking up to the private hydrant. I would recommend finding the public hydrant. Because what you find is the business will tap into the water main, and their tap in might be 10 inches, and that will feed all of the water supply for the building in addition to the sprinkler system and the hydrant loop. So if you have, like they had in California, they had an Amazon building burn in California. Right. They had a very large fire. There were 16 sprinkler zones, and there was every single sprinkler in the building was flowing water. Fire department showed up, and they went to hook up to the hydrant, the private red hydrants inside the loop, and they were only getting 30 PSI out of those hydrants because the sprinkler system completely maxed out the water supply. So they then had to search for yellow hydrants on the main road, and they brought in their water supply from the water mains, not in the private loop. So big buildings like this, absolutely start looking for yellow hydrants. And if you have to source pump and pump that in, I would recommend that.
And the other thing with that, Clark, that I've seen happen is we had, when I was a lieutenant, we had some stuff go on in the Brooklyn Navy Yard. But the Navy Yard was a private hydrant system. But if you're at a hydrant near the end of the pier, they weren't looped. They were dead end hydrants, and somebody was on a hydrant behind you, and they hook up to that hydrant, they take away all your water. So now the first in pumper is dead in the water. They don't have any water, and that hand line is gone. So you have to know those hydrants and how they lay out in those industrial parks, those Amazon places, and everything else. You have to know all of that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's, we could do water supply, but we're going to have you on again, Ed. You're kind of our subject matter expert when it comes. I got to mention this one. When it comes to water supply, I don't ever want to forget Paul Shapiro, because he's up there in heaven right now, Paul. And no one had his heart and his head in water supply more than Paul Shapiro, and with a willingness to teach it. He has a book, and it's a fire engineering book. To me, it's the Water Supply Bible. And I had, thanks to you, Clark, I had the pleasure of meeting him finally after being a student of his for a long, long time. And I finally got a chance to meet him before he passed. But thank you for that opportunity. So I wanted to give a shout out to Paul, because I know, Paul, you're probably watching. And
it's small world, Bill. Christian right there with Ed Collette. Christian, why don't you share your story about Paul, all the way from Peru?
Oh, yeah. I mean, here in Chile, Paul Shapiro came to my fire department in Valdivia, southern Chile, in the year 2012 to do water supply and hydraulics training. It was a big thing for us in Chile, in South America. It made a big impact to the point that Santiago Fire Department brought him next year, 2013, and then my fire department brought him again, 2014. And those three times he showed up in my country, I was doing translation for him. So we became very good friends. He became my mentor. I ended up going to the States to do ride-alongs and training in King County, but he invited us to do some private training with a fire department in California. So he was a great person. I got to meet him. I learned a whole lot from him. And he did a great impact in the South American fire departments. So we're using LDH to hook up to hydrants, where we got better into drafting, got better into relay pumping, especially with those low flow hydrants. And by the way, the maximum distance we can have a hydrant here in Chile is 500 feet. So they're low pressure, low volume, and very distant to any residential or commercial fire. So we have a big handicap for water supply issues here.
Yep. I was personal friends of Paulie, and I'll tell you, Christian, he had two highlights in his career. He said number one was training at Notre Dame. He couldn't believe that he got to train at Notre Dame, and another highlight of his career was going down and training with you. And when Paul died, Christian, you reached out to me, and I can't believe we're on the same chat together. This is amazing. But you reached out to me, and you sent me some words about Paul Shapiro, and I included what you sent us in Paul Shapiro's eulogy here in Las Vegas. So that was exceptional. I can't believe we are just randomly on the same chat at this point.
Well, that's the hand of God, brother. That is the hand of God.
Yep.
And I think we're going to wrap this up. Our thanks to Key. Christian, we'll have you on again, brother. You make your way up here to Miami. We'll get you robbed, and you'll meet some girl in a bar and wake up in the morning and your gold chain and your Rolex will be gone. So,
and your kidney.
Yeah, man. So, guys, this was great. Jimmy and Clark, please have a safe shift. Have a safe shift. And Christian, this is not a coincidence. It's the hand of God. Daryl, thanks for participating. Captain Mike, I think we covered some real good ground here. Brent, very impressive video. And hey, we all have a lot to be thankful for Thanksgiving. So I know I do. So let's count our blessings, because not everybody is as fortunate as we are. So until next month, stay safe, stay healthy, and God bless. See you next month.
See you again.